Return again, return again, return to the land of your soul.
We stand this sacred day in God's presence, no matter how far we may have wandered, questioning, questing, hopeful, heartbroken. No matter where this moment we are singular in our struggles, we are nonetheless standing together, united by generations past, from Minsk to Moscow to Morocco, from Pelham to Mamaroneck. As we are joined through the future, we share our hope in generations yet to come. Strengthened in knowing we are not alone, sustained in the gift of our gathering here today, returning to ourselves and so to one another, we turn, O God, to you as one.
Return to who you are. Return to what you are. Return to where you are, born and reborn again. Return again. Return again. Return to the land of your soul.
Many of us, myself included, tend to rush through life. We go from one thing to the next, the whole list of a day, trying to squeeze it all in, and what we miss are the moments, the miracles. When I walked through the office at 8 o'clock this morning and turned to one of our temporary office folks, really people from the Straight Gate Church who are helping us out, I said, "How are you?" And she said, "I'm up. I'm here." And I thought, that's exactly how you embrace the moment. So that's why this reading, as we open, helps us open our hearts and our spirits to the miracles we always miss. Join me. Holy One, we come before you a patchwork of pressures and anxieties.
A diverse assembly, distinct in our yearnings, unique in our hopes. Many of us are tired. Some
responsively. You are the one who unites all things, who links life to life in a sacred chain.
the forest maker, the soil.
Our faces are reflected in the creatures of earth. We carry the sea within us.
Our fate is connected to rivers and deserts, our family, a many-branched tree of life.
All beings intertwine in you. All are encompassed in Adonai Echad.
Thus no man is an island, no soul exists apart.
To say Echad is to know this truth, to see the whole world, humankind, undivided.
Adonai Echad, we proclaim you one.
Baruch atah Adonai habocher ba'amo Yisrael be'ahava.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשיטתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Amen. We carry the Exodus vision wherever we go, lest we forget our sense of liberation, lest we lose the joy of breathing free, lest we grow indifferent and blind to others' pain. So long as we work to make you present, we walk the path of freedom. But if we forget to bring you into this world, then we return to the darkness.
שיפחו גאולים לשמך על שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו והמלכו ויאמרו בעזרת ישראל, גואלנו, אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני גואל ישראל.
We rise for the tefillah. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב,
אלוהי שרה, אלוהי רבקה, אלוהי רחל ואלוהי לאה, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה.
Remember us for life, sovereign God who treasures life. Inscribe us in the book of life for your sake, God of life. At the end of all the who shall live and who shall die warnings comes the metaphor of greatest meaning at this moment, a series of similes for human life, the first being, each of us is a shattered vessel. If you remember back to Gates of Repentance, each of us is a shattered urn. Closer attention, thanks to our teacher, Rabbi Gordon Tucker, who was the rabbi for decades at Temple Israel Center in White Plains, reveals a profound truth. Locating Leviticus as the source, an earthen vessel in which the sin offering was boiled shall be broken, the Mishnah asks, and how do we purify such a vessel? The rabbis in the Talmud answer, by breaking it further. And who do these very broken, yet somehow potentially pure vessels represent? The very first things made of the clay of the earth. Us. The power of our prayer lies in knowing it is through our imperfection, our inadequacy, our brokenness. It's because our hearts have the ability to break in remorse, because our spirits can be crushed in compassion, that we can, through that brokenness, seek renewal. As Leonard Cohen teaches, there's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Unatana Tokef, how awesome the power of this prayer moment that even broken, the Holy One can help us feel whole yet again.
On Rosh Hashanah it is written, on the fast of Yom Kippur, it is sealed.
Berosh, Berosh, Berosh Hashanah, Berosh Hashanah Yikatevu, Uviom, Uviom, Uviom Tzom Kippur, Uviom Tzom Kippur Yikatevu. Kitzor, und mi lo
Through return to the right path, through prayer and righteous giving, we can transcend the harshness of the decree. What a contrast. We just talked about brokenness as the key to our repentance and return, and we turn around and ask for peace. Shalom. The root of the word shalom is shalem, wholeness, to be whole. So don't be confused. The Hebrew has a twofold purpose. Shalom and shlemut really don't mean whole. It means being able to live with all the brokenness, with all the pieces and fragmentation, and still feel like we're keeping it together. That's what our prayer aspires and calls for us to do. Join me. Shalom only happens when there is shlemut, peace within. So do I pose this challenge to my spirit. May I learn to embrace as easily as I evaluate. May I quiet the ever-present instinct to judge and critique. May I cultivate the gift of listening without framing my reply. May I learn to accept help from those who care for me. May I grow less insistent, life bend to my expectations. May generosity of spirit find within me. Oh. Take a minute. Think about the shlemut, the wholeness that you need to find, and perhaps how you can work to make it real.
לחיים טובים, לחיים טובים ולשלום. ברוך אתה אדוני, עושה
On page 13, we rise. We have ark openers, and I know who they are. Responsively, Avinu Malkeinu, almighty and merciful, hear our voice. Avinu Malkeinu, have compassion on us and our families. Avinu Malkeinu, halt the reign of those who cause pain and terror. Avinu Malkeinu, renew for us a year of goodness. Avinu Malkeinu, let our eyes behold the dawn of redemption.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Vonenu, Ki Imanu Masim. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Vonenu, Ki Imanu Masim. Aseh imanu tzedaka v'chesed v'hoshienu. Aseh imanu tzedaka v'chesed v'hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, Vonenu, Vonenu, Ki Imanu Masim. Avinu Malkeinu, Vonenu, Vonenu, Ki Imanu Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Vonenu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu
Let the reading of Torah be like prayer, flowing like waters that renew the spirit, refreshing and sweet to nourish the soul. Let the reading of Torah be like prayer, every word a blessing, every verse a conversation with God.
Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum Dechanun, Erech Apayim Verav Chesed Ve'emet, Yotzer Chesed La'olafim, Nosei Avon V'Fesha, V'Chata'ah V'Nakeh.
What's the key word in our Torah portion, especially at the beginning? Rabbi Jeffrey Katz points it out. Hayom. When again do we enter the covenant? Hayom. When do we stand before the Holy One? Hayom. What then is the key to turning our lives around, to making life better and sweeter and more sustainable for those you love and yourself? Hayom. What does Hayom mean? Today. Don't worry about what happened yesterday. Don't worry about what might happen, putting your eggs or your bet on a basket of tomorrow. Take care of today. Last night I talked about the two words sown into our spirits, uvacharta b'chaim, choose life. And so this is an aliyah for choosing life. If you experienced loss directly or indirectly this past year, and yet affirmed the gift of life, if you made memory live and transformed death and loss into life, or if you witnessed a difficult moment, if you felt the darkness but turned to the light around you, within you, and made that light shine, if you saw a family member or a friend struggling and reaching out with care and support, help them see the light and so choose life. If these apply to anybody, raise your hand. Raise your hand. All right, if your hand raised, stand if your hand was raised, if you can. And how about this one? If someone else helped you face down the darkness, face a life challenge, those difficult moments, and lent a hand or a heart or an ear, enabled you to feel connected, feel a little bit more whole, even in your brokenness, and choose life, then you should stand too. And now if you're aspiring to choose life, if you're thinking, you know, it's such a good choice, you should stand as well. This aliyah affirms that choice, the gift of being able, with the help of those around us and the Spirit within us, to choose life. We're going to have you do the first part of the blessing before Karen reads, and then you can sit down because it's a long reading, and these people read Torah, they just take their time. So, ready? 1, 2, 3. Baruch hu et Adonai hamborach. Baruch Adonai hamborach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha.
Ziknechem v'shodrechem kol ish Yisrael tapchem nishechem v'gercha אשר בקרב מחנך, מהוטה ביצך עד ממך לעברך בברית. אדוני אלוהיך ובעלתו אשר אדוני אלוהיך כורת עמך היום למען הקים אותך היום לו לעם, והוא יחיה לך לאלוהים כאשר דיבר לך, וכאשר נשבע לאבותיך, לאברהם, ליצחק וליעקב, ולא איתכם לבדכם אנוכי כורת את הברית הזאת ואת ההלכה הזאת, כי את אשר ישנו פה עמנו עומד היום לפני אדוני אלוהינו, ואת אשר איננו פה עמנו היום.
המצווה הזאת אשר אנוכי מצווה היום לא נפלאתי ממך ולא רחוקה היא, לא בשמיים היא לאמור, מי יעלה לנו השמיימה ויקהה לנו וישמיענו אתה ונעשנה, ולא מעבר לים היא לאמור, מי יעבר לנו אל עבר הים ויקהה לנו ונשמענו אותה ונעשנה, כי קרוב אליך הדבר מאור, בפיך ובלבבך לעשות טוב.
ראה נתתי לפניך היום את החיים ואת הטוב ואת המוות ואת הרע, אשר אנוכי מצווך היום לאהבה את אדוני אלוהיך, ללכת בדרכיו ולשמור מצוותיו וחוקותיו ומשפטיו, וחיית ורבית וברכך אדוני אלוהיך בארץ אשר אתה בשמה לרשתה. ואם יפנה לבבך ולא תשמע ונינחת והשתחווית לאלוהים אחרים ועבדתם, הגדתי לכם היום כי יבואו תאבדון, לא תאריכון ימים האדמה אשר אתה עובר את הירדן לבוא שמה לרשתה. הידותי בכם היום את השמיים ואת הארץ, החיים והמוות נתתי לפניך, הברכה והקללה, ובחרת בחיים למען תהיה אתה וזרעך לאהבה את אדוני אלוהיך, לשמוע בקולו לדווקא בו, כי הוא חייך ואורך ימיך לשבת האדמה אשר נשבע אדוני לאבותיך, לאברהם, ליצחק וליעקב, לתת להם. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה. אמן.
It's in moments like these that we feel small, and also that our world feels small, because healing is the hope of every single human being. All around the world, people are broken, suffering, sick, struggling. And so we are linked hand in hand and heart to heart in that hope. Pause for a minute, close your eyes if you will. Think about how connected we are, sometimes how crushed we are in spirit, and yet the hope that links us and sustains us. If you're thinking of somebody special, somebody who's so in need of healing, or people you don't even know, you can say those names now aloud. As you remain standing in the presence of Torah, I'd call on, I think, Philip and Lisa to serve as Hagba and Glila. They're right there. They're right there. Come on up. This is a major strong right. Do leverage. Do like this. Do like this. Right, and then push down. It's going to be very, very.
בזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל אני אדוני ביד משה לילה 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 לילה
You're going to go near the candle. You're going to come near me, go on the other side. If we could have our readers prayer for our congregation, prayer for our country, and prayer for Israel, that would be Harry First, Alina Tugend, and Rebecca for Lynn Reichgart.
Adonai, eternal God, who watches this holy congregation. May you see a congregation that lives up to its ideals and to the ideals of Judaism. May you see a congregation that pursues justice and righteousness, knowledge and wisdom, that is charitable in all its actions. May you see a congregation with a vision of social justice for its community and for the greater world. And may you see a congregation connected to you in holy prayer that walks humbly with you, O God, creator of the universe and giver of Torah.
God of all ages, who exemplifies goodness and justice, instill in each of us the capacity to heal our country from the enormous schisms we now experience. Grant us the power to move beyond the intractable positions that exist and help us listen to each other with open hearts and minds for the well-being of our nation. Help us extinguish hate and approach each other without accusation or contempt. Let us recognize the privileges we have and make us humble as we understand there are many who do not share our advantage. In doing so, let us move beyond intolerance and prejudice and fix the errors of our country's past. Let us move forward together, not necessarily agreeing, but listening to and understanding others with differing points of view. Let us learn to work together to make our country one which is worthy of us, one which serves the needs of all of its people, and one in which we strengthen our commitment to the betterment of all. Let us follow the teachings of our Jewish values to love and uphold our precious democracy. Let each of us be an advocate for justice, an activist for liberty, and a defender of dignity.
My mother was born in Jerusalem. She and my father, a Holocaust survivor, fought separately in the War of Independence. From these deep roots, my prayer for Israel is that it more fully embody the fundamental values of Judaism: justice, equality, peace, and democracy for all. For Israel to move forward more than looks backwards, to not simply exist as a future homeland for our children's children's children, but one that they can support with pride and integrity. As the great Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel said, the essence of man is not what he is, but what he is able to be. I pray that Israel becomes a land it is able to be.
On page 22, R.V. Dewey, our confessional, join me. Because we were angry, because we didn't think, because we were exhausted and on edge, because we had been drinking, because we can be mean, because we were reckless and selfish, because we were worried about money, because our marriage was dead, because other people were doing it, because we thought we could get away with it, because we did something wrong, because we're in pain, because we wish we could undo it, because we hurt him, because we lost her trust, because we let them down, because we were self-destructive, because we were foolish, because we're ashamed, because that's not who we are, because that's not who we want to be, because we want to be forgiven. God, bring down our walls of defensiveness. Help us stay in humility. Please give us the strength to do what's right. Our God and God of all generations, may our prayers reach your presence, and when we turn to you, do not be indifferent. Adonai, we are arrogant and stubborn, thanks, claiming to be blameless and free of sin. In truth, we have stumbled and strayed. We have done wrong.
Ashamnu, Aganu, Gazalnu, Dibarnu Dofi, Hevinu, Hirshanu, Zanu, Hamasnu, Tafanu Shaker,
Arvidui Rabba on 24 responsively. For these sins, our God, we ask forgiveness. The ways we have wronged you through our thoughtlessness and harm we've caused in your world through impulsive acts of malice.
The ways we have wronged you by abusing our power and harm we've caused in your world through disrespect to parents and teachers.
The ways we've wronged you by giving in to our hostile impulses and harm we have caused in your world through inflexibility and stubbornness. The ways we have wronged you through lies and deceit and harm we have caused in your world by making light of serious matters.
The ways we have wronged you in our routine conversations and harm we have caused in your world through envy.
For all these failures of judgment and will, God of forgiveness, forgive us, pardon us, lead us to atonement. Growing up as a teen, very involved in Young Judea, my Zionist youth movement, I spent my high school summers blissfully entrenched in the culture of Camp Tel Yehuda in Barryville, New York. Even just saying it makes me smile. It was heaven for me. There was no horseback riding, no water skiing. We did play lots of basketball in a broken down basketball court. The aim, based on the Young Judea connection we shared, was to create a community of young Zionists, all of us working on our personal aliyah, which the program itself inculcated. Just ask Rabbi Frankel, who was not alone a product of Young Judea, but unlike me, a regional president of New England. Rabbi Frankel was national president and went on to become the camp director. I recall my second summer in Ulpan, the camp's Hebrew immersion program, spending days getting ready for the big play production, The Wizard of Oz, with a decided peoplehood plot twist. Not only were all the songs in Hebrew, the storyline led Dorothy not home to Kansas, but to her homeland, back to Israel. My best friend got the cowardly lion role I'd hoped for, but I still remember the chorus part we sang for Dorothy's big number. Sham yeshna eretz kach omrim ba kol chalomotai efshar lehagshim. Somewhere there is a land, so they say, where our dreams will fulfill, come what may. We all knew it. Israel was our home. We all felt it. Israel's dream was our daily hope. But that Zionist vision, which was my life perspective in the early 1970s, feels so out of focus in the early 2020s. In this past year's Pew Jewish Population Survey, though 8 in 10 Americans identified as Jewish respondents express a sense of Jewish belonging, the divide on Israel is striking. Over 80% of the over 50 crowd claim Israel support as important or essential. The under 30s, more than 27% said that Israel had little or no impact on their Jewish lives. For younger generations today, Israel attachment is tenuous at best, and I would guess that a majority have a tough time even perceiving the Jewish state as a place they could ever call home. Truth be told, you don't have to be a 20-something to be distressed by some of the failed policies of the recent administration, even in its aftermath, nor in the persistence of problems the status quo has caused for life in the territories. In most areas, West Bank settlers entrenched among the Palestinians, small pockets protected at great peril by the IDF, caused severe economic and security restrictions for an Arab majority. Not to mention adding degrees of difficulty to any future two-state solution. The 54-year-old governmental acquiescence following the Six-Day War will take courage and ingenuity to overcome, but compromise will be the cornerstone of any hope for tomorrow. And today, with so much work to be done within Israeli society to make it the democratic, pluralistic state it must be, and with contention, the perpetual state of relations with our nearest Arab neighbors, the last thing anyone needed was the 11 days in May crisis. Whatever spark you select, from the potential eviction of 6 Arab families in East Jerusalem's Sheikh Farah apartments, to the Jerusalem police going up to the Temple Mount to disconnect the Al-Aqsa Mosque sound system, calling Muslims to prayer because the president of Israel was giving a speech 3 blocks away. What's clear is that in the tinderbox of daily life in Israel, the flames for a fight are easily fanned. And when a fire breaks out, the result is always devastating. Over 250 dead by May's end. Mostly Palestinians in Gaza, leaving economic distress, whole communities dispossessed. And with Hamas missiles striking indiscriminately in Israel's major population centers, Israel citizens, rightly in fear of their lives, running for shelter. The residual trauma remains. As the hostility reverberated, spilling into the streets of Israeli Arab towns, from the Negev to the Galilee, bands of young Israeli Muslims hurling rocks at Jewish neighborhoods, even setting a synagogue on flames. Bands of Israeli Orthodox extremists attacking Arab citizens at will. We understand why hope is hard to see. Tribal conflicts are always nearsighted because they cannot see much beyond themselves. For Israel's vision to ever be realized, for the sake of its own tomorrow, Israel must be farsighted. Consider then what I'd propose a bifocal prescription that might bring our Israel vision into focus, if not clarify its purpose as a place we can one day call home. One lens helps us see from the outside in, the other from the inside out. Prescription part 1. How might we view Israel to help it feel more like home? With diaspora distance almost always diminishing our read on the nuance and details of life on the ground, we tend to see events in Israel as black and white, in sharp contrast, failing to notice the spectrum of color, varied and complex. The recent conflagration, case in point. Our response, or at least to most of us, was to blame. Those murderous Hamas terrorists, those warmongering Israelis. Einat Wilf, former member of Knesset, foreign policy advisor to Shimon Peres, calls this the placard strategy. Pithy slogans you'd see on a protest sign, condensing the condemnation to a potable quotable. But because this approach is not as much about facts as it is feelings, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict gets poured through the prism of our own American social critique, rather than the tedious work of encouraging both sides to address the great challenges of learning to live together. We take sides, right against might, good against evil, pick your idea. Yet if the goal is to engage with actual issues, to work towards acceptable, mutually beneficial solutions, then casting one side as the good guy and the other as the bad guy is not only counterproductive, it fails to acknowledge the far-sighted truth. When neighbors fight, nobody wins. So what's the lens that can bring clarity, looking from the outside in? National editor of The Forward, Rob Eshman, offers a radical idea. Rather than our being armchair warriors, not so professional pundits hurling platitudes, we could take a balcony seat above the fray and ask, what can be done on both sides to advance the cause of reconciliation? Can we be critical of violence, of inhumane treatment wherever it arises? Can we not see that Israel's vitality is intertwined with a more humane, just, and vital quality of life for Palestinians? Yes, we can, like our brothers, Ben and Jerry, critique and even condemn key policies of Israel, while still fully supporting the growth and existence of a Jewish state. But rather than a half-baked boycott for human rights, attempting to punish Israel, as it did, while also punishing the Palestinians, by fostering humanity and sanity among Israelis and Palestinians alike, let's find practical, real-life ways to help real people willing to treat one another with dignity and human decency, to reach beyond the borders of their own tribe, seeing life on the ground through the lens of dialogue, imagining a more hopeful tomorrow. And what of our lens from the inside out? Prescription part 2, how can Israel's self-perception help envision a state which we'll see, no matter where we live, like home? Fractured and fragile, suffering from societal dissension that we know too well, sown and sustained by its leader of the last 12 years, a prime minister personally corrupt, politically self-serving, exiting office without ever acknowledging defeat or caring enough about the country's continuity to contact the incoming leaders. Israel requires a revisioning from the inside out. As American-born but longtime Israeli venture capitalist Adam Fisher wrote, responding to blanket condemnations of Israel in May by a certain U.S. congressional representative best known by her initials, true leaders have the self-confidence to change their minds, if not admit error. Israel is an imperfect democracy, which is how a lot of democracies can be described, but it is our imperfect democracy. Those of us who love this country will continue to working to improve things here with care, while defending it from its detractors who don't really care much about any of us, Arab or Jew. I thought Adam was a rabbi, so I Google searched him and realized he worked for Bessemer Venture Capital. So I called our member, Bob Goodman, and I said, "You know this guy?" He said, "He's my partner in Israel. I call him every day." I said, "Can I call him?" Adam said to me the following a few weeks ago: "As Jews, no matter where we live, we all need to care about Israel, what happens there and how, for it ever to feel like home." As an entering 10th grader at Camp Tel Yehuda, I spent every morning in an hour-and-a-half Sikha session. I loved it, a sort of lecture lesson on one of the key thinkers in what was then our American Zionist Bible, Arthur Hertzberg's The Zionist Idea. One of the other kids at camp was a highly committed, critically minded guy from Queens who was always asking questions. Gil Troy, who grew up not only to become professor of North American history at McGill, but among the most influential interpreters of Zionism in the world. A couple years ago, he published what's been called a Zionist Bible for the 21st century, entitled The Zionist Ideas. Closing his acknowledgments, Gil shares his highest hope. "I want Jews and non-Jews concerned about the Jewish future to join this rousing conversation about this grand Jewish experiment. Together we can help the Jewish homeland that fulfilled its founding mission as a refuge reach its full potential as an old new dreamland, a model Jewish democracy." Troy sets the standard for today's refocused Israel vision. It's a conversation of shared concern, where everyone's questions are heard, all answers considered, debated, and where the aim brings renewal of Israel's founding hope. As Theodor Herzl wrote in his diary in 1896, the world would be liberated by our freedom, magnified by our greatness, and whatever we attempt to accomplish for our own welfare there will be beneficial for the good of all humanity. Imagine Israel's very being a blessing. It's every day the unfolding of a dream. With all it faces today, that founding vision seems more like a pipe dream. Yet formidable as it feels, Israel's future has always been fueled by determined, defiant, visionary dreamers. Just about a year ago, a Knesset member from the centrist Blue and White Party gave her maiden speech, usually a formality, but for her it was anything but. In 11 minutes before the Knesset, this modern Orthodox moderate challenged the bifurcated body to restore the Jewish state's center. Since I arrived 2 weeks ago, I haven't stopped thinking about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who managed to rescue the Jewish people out of Jerusalem and its burning temple, and through his Academy of Study at Yavne, invent Judaism anew. In the midst of a terrible civil war about how to deal with the Romans, which turned into a war of identity, a war of all against all, we find ourselves today, 2,000 years later, in the midst of a massive political crisis. A terrible plague spreads outside, And yet, inside, the same destructive desire to defeat each other, the same blindness causes us to spend most of our time on internal conflict. We attack one another, and we endanger the very existence of our shared home. Then, Tehillah Friedman posits the radical possibility of an old new vision. As she said, I'm suggesting the formation of an alliance of moderates to bring back the forces from the extremes and to build a shared center. I am a Jew, a religious person, a feminist, a Zionist. That all carries truth and good. But I have things to learn from Mizrahi traditionalism, from the Jews of the Soviet Union, from the Ethiopian, from the liberals, from the Haredim. I have things to learn from the Arabs, the Druze, from the Bedouin. I have things to learn from the Jews of the diaspora. Friedman finished with her inside-out understanding of why this vision is crucial for Israel's continued existence. I speak in a gentle voice. You can be misled into thinking my message is calling to form a gentle and compromising center, but it's the exact opposite. The center I'm talking about is a principled center, not willing to compromise about its responsibility for all the residents of our country or about the role it plays for the many who really want to live together. It puts a limit on self-righteousness, limits on selfishness. It is a center that's willing to sacrifice in the name of moderation and democracy. A Judaism that makes a place for others. A center that with its very being protects the rules that allow us to manage our difficulties without falling apart. Holding back tears, deeply aware that Israel's survival rests on seeing anew, she ends, I believe in the need for a unity government. It's the only way to save us from destruction. These are the days of the third temple. Just like the two that preceded it, it is fragile. It's flammable. It's not a given. Its stability is our responsibility. Its existence depends upon us. Israel today is guided by two leaders who bring very different perspectives to the table and who have little choice but to compromise, to cooperate, if they were ever going to move things forward. In 1973, during those formative teen years I spent at Tel Yehuda, members of Young Judea, just a few years older than I was, founded Kibbutz Keturah in the middle of the Negev desert. I remember thinking when I heard, that is absolutely mashugana. Then, 3 years later in 1976, on Young Judea year course, my year between high school and college, I spent 3 months on Keturah, up at 5:30 a.m., milking the cows, picking peppers. I got to live the dream. Kibbutz Keturah encapsulated Israel's hope for all it could become. Its vision statement nearly 50 years later still reflects the far-sighted, pragmatic idealism that invites every one of us to see her or himself through its prism. Our community is a critical part of the Zionist enterprise whose central mission is the Jewish people's national, spiritual, and cultural renewal. Our identities as Jews, as individuals, as a kibbutz community, and as a nation are all part of a dynamic growth process. Encouraging participation in this great adventure, this is our call to help make real the vision, to embrace these shared ideals, for they include us all. This then tiny kibbutz, founded by crazy American Zionist kids, understood what we must today. Living in covenant means widening our lens and deepening our Israel vision with a perspective that is bifocal, integrating an insider's commitment with an outsider's questioning and critique. For then, we can help foster a reclamation of that place I would call the sacred center, a place that takes responsibility for the welfare of all who live there, a place where Herzl's dream still lives, where coexistence is made real every day through courageous compromise, a place that enlarges our spirit through a dialogue of difference and helps us find our way back to a land, a life, a hope we can yet call home. So this new year, may it be. Amen.
Please rise. God of infinite hope, with brokenness abounding, help us to realize the source of our blessings. May we reach out in common care, knowing we are in your hands. May we see the responsibility we bear, feeling the bond that links our human family. Following in Abraham and Sarah's footsteps, let us do what is just and right. Struggling as Israel must, may we bring sustenance and sweetness, hearing your call echoing. Help us make our world this new year more holy and more whole, and let us say, Amen.